On the level of basic control, everything is simple in fighting games. Here's your punch, and here's your kick. Change their strength by pressing these buttons. Or you could have a great unique attack by pressing that dedicated button, depending on the game. The normals are no problem to perform. Issues start with tricky specials and supers, and they intensify with the fast pace of proper fighting matches. You know, those quarter and half circles to unleash a powerful move, or quick and precise button sequences to keep your combos going even in the air, some training is necessary to add those to your active skills. While practice and training are at the core of fighting games, no one wants to have unnecessary obstacles in their way on their path to triumph. And it's where controllers enter the scene. Is it weird to think of them as a continuation of players' fingers, to reach the virtual world and start fighting there? Or is it rather a magic portal to deliver your thoughts to the digital characters? No, that weirdness is getting out of hand. Anyways, a good controller is important to make the transition from pressing individual normals to delivering amazing combos and devastating supers as naturally and flawlessly as possible. Having a good controller means finding something totally suitable for your habits and even your personality. Have you ever visited a fighting game event? For example, people bring an absolutely crazy variety of controllers to EVO, with some over-the-top examples of fight sticks. Many pro players take leverless controls to esports tournaments. Yep, they perform miracles on those stages. So it is pretty logical to assume that to get really good at fighting games, such a big specialized thing is necessary. What level can I even dream of achieving with just a default DualSense or Xbox controller? Well, this sounds like a good segue into our discussion on what are the best controllers for fighting games. This piece of equipment comes with a game console, and it's not too expensive to have one for your PC experience either. The exact model depends on your personal preferences, but any choice here comes with the same pros and cons. We actually started the video with those cons, but let's emphasize them one more time in more detail. Analog sticks of a standard gamepad are a little small to be precise with complicated inputs. It is not really hard to get used to quarter circles, and with proper practice, input errors become less common even during feverish action, like air combos in anime fighting games. But performing moves like overdrives in Guilty Gear Strive, or having a reliable DP move within a quick flow of attacks might be a problem for quite a long time. That's why most fighting game players don't even consider using analog sticks. It's more often the choice of casual players. D-pads on a standard gamepad may be a good alternative, providing better input precision. It requires some extra training for your thumb though, and not all D-pads are the same. Diagonal movements can be more difficult on PlayStation controllers in comparison to Xbox, thanks to their general physical form. The ergonomic aspect also could be named a disadvantage of gamepads as controllers for fighting games. Some people have to adjust their grip for better access to face buttons. These downsides of standard gamepads become much less meaningful if a game is actually designed with such controllers in mind. Say, many Capcom games are designed for 6-button arcade machines, and the arcade sticks are a more natural choice for them. But beyond that, most other games are created specifically for consoles. You still may have execution errors in Tekken or Mortal Kombat because of the speed and precise timing for pressing buttons. Some practice should solve them, especially because as games are designed for gamepad, the players also not designed, sure, but have significant experience with them. Have you seen a meme about a keyboard gamer who tries to play a shooter with a gamepad? The core of it is that you get used to a thing you play games with. Through and through, console players don't have that issue in shooters or in fighting games. It's a big advantage that you don't need to adapt to a new controller. All those games you played before gather together to support your skills. The issues sure will come, as no experience with other games can prepare you for those Guilty Gear overdrives, but they are not super pronounced for every single person. It just depends. Many esports professionals still use those PlayStation and Xbox gamepads. Maybe your fine motor skills are okay too. One more advantage remains to be added here. Do you remember earlier when we stated that gamepads were rather cheap and came with consoles? It is surely a substantial plus. An esports career does not start with purchasing an expensive fight stick. That step should come from feeling an internal potential, but yet having physical input limitations. Have you objectively reached this level? If yes, a fight stick might be the next step. That thing about having experience with a specific type of controller and then carrying it through your gaming life is quite relevant for fight sticks. A long time ago, ancient people had to visit arcades to play fighting games. The stick and big buttons are just normal for those machines, and they are very convenient for all sorts of classic inputs. That convenience is a good thing to bring into other gaming devices, up to modern consoles and PCs. Okay, those people are not ancient. Don't throw anything at us, please. The point is, the whole gaming tradition has grown significantly since then. There is no connection between success in fighting games and playing on a fight stick. The thing is good, sure, no doubt about it. A big stick offers a lot of controls, so you use your whole hand. The playing process becomes more natural in terms of the hand-eye coordination, since it's a very physical and intuitive thing. You see the DP input or a half circle, and you just make those movements with your stick. That's not quite the case with D-pads and leverless controllers, where you have a layer of abstraction and should translate, for example, a half circle into a left, down, right input. But don't expect to pick up an arcade stick and then see esports trophies automatically appearing on your shelf. Some adaptation is needed to move from the standard gamepad to a stick, and the process might not be quick and natural. There are people who abandon the idea of switching to fight sticks as gamepads turn out to be more comfortable for them. In some cases, the improvement becomes clear only after a few months of practicing with a stick. Two other aspects are even more important. First, good arcade sticks are expensive. No joking here. Be ready to pay a lot. And the problem is not only the money itself, but the adequacy of the expense. Are you sure you are limited by the gamepad and not by the general lack of training and dedication? The second one is the size of a good fight stick. Not everyone will be comfortable keeping the thing on their knees or on a desk in front of them. Small gamepads develop some habits on how we sit in front of a TV or a monitor. Are fight sticks really good? Yes, but not for everyone. Is having an arcade stick absolutely necessary for fighting games? No. Let's just say not everyone aims to be a pro. Having fun with your game and being good at it, this is possible without a fight stick too. But such a controller can help you break through limits. It's true. Isn't a leverless controller even more effective for this? One more thing to add about fight sticks is that they are just cool. Like having one and playing with it often comes from not a practical need, but from that specific feeling it gives. For some gamers, it's nostalgic. For others, it's just fun. If you feel like this, you probably need no other reasoning. In theory, this device solves every problem with execution in fighting games. Such controllers have buttons instead of a stick, and the preciseness of input becomes close to perfect. If we highlight the 623 movement on a leverless controller, it turns into pressing forward, then down, and then forward plus down together. Your anti-air option becomes reliable, not just a chaotic mess with an uncertain probability of success. Not only does a leverless controller offer a precision-related advantage, but also it has an ergonomic plus. Arcade buttons give better access to inputs, since your hand is not occupied by having to grip or hold the controller, which usually leaves you with only 3 fingers to press buttons. And using buttons for movement means you don't have to worry about the travel time of the stick, which makes motion inputs faster. In addition, there are also numerous input shortcuts that are exclusive to leverless controllers, some of which are almost broken, making Capcom require a rule that down plus up should result in neutral instead of up. Many complicated inputs become simpler, but again, only in theory. But what about the practical and realistic side of the process? While offering ultimate precision, this type of controller also demands precision from the player. Even something basic like a half circle requires pressing and releasing buttons in perfect order within fractions of a second if you want to execute it quickly. On a gamepad, you just roll your thumb over a D-pad or ride the gate on an arcade stick. Let's think back to that part earlier with gamers having general habits. Having buttons instead of a stick is a clear reference to keyboards, but to be honest, these are rarely used with this intensity of movement. Genres like FPSs or RTSs might require high APM, but they rarely ask you to do a long and strict series of quick inputs. So even keyboard players will need to adapt to this type of input. And for controller arcade players, switching to buttons often becomes less exciting than expected. The process of adapting to this new input paradigm requires time and patience. It's also rewarding, but in the beginning it may feel like you lose victories here and now, just because you can't make that movement with button pressing as quick and as natural as with a stick. It is very important to be aware of this feature, and not fall into the illusion of an omnipotent leverless controller. While it could be perfect for you, it can just as easily be awfully uncomfortable and require too much practice to get used to. And that nice big model you probably saw many esports professionals use and promote could be very expensive. Luckily, there is a way to get a feel for them without spending money. Yep, take your keyboard, enter the training mode, and perform all those specials and supers. Sure, a real controller is much better thanks to the button size and positioning, even if some professionals are playing on keyboards, but the general understanding of what you will get is certainly easily available. What about size? The industry has started to produce some very interesting smaller models, so the controller doesn't have to be huge. This might be a good feature for traveling or for your personal habits of playing, like how and where you sit. But the position of buttons may bring some tension to your hands and might not provide the same level of comfort. Ultimately, the size choice depends on your personal preferences. Otherwise, it's pretty much like with fight sticks. Are you sure it is your controller that limits your success in fighting games? Can this leverless thing open a portal for you to that undoubtful dedication and make you more motivated? If so, then go for it. It becomes pretty clear that there is no ultimate decision for everyone. The choice strongly depends on the game you play, on your previous experience and current habits, on your goal in fighting games, and certainly your budget. If you are aware of this limitation of not being able to execute some moves with your current controller, then you probably should look for a solution. Buying a new controller is not always the best one. Dedicating more time to execution practice in training mode and in low-level CPU matches can bring pretty good results. Or you could consider switching to a dedicated gamepad, made specifically for fighting games. For example, the Fighting Commander Octa by Hori has 6 buttons, like fight sticks, and an octagonal rim for the analog stick, which makes it more comfortable for fighting game inputs. High goals require actions. Winning tournaments or just participating in them as a decent opponent, this requires practice. And perhaps a dedicated controller will also help. A fight stick is generally a nice thing to have. It feels good to play with one, and the adaptation is not that long and difficult. In general, it's a choice of highly motivated players, ready to make a step from the casual crew to competitive. But again, not every game really needs a fight stick. The same high goals in combination with a special mindset may take you to a leverless controller. Make sure you've tried the input pattern enough before making this purchase. Make sure you are dedicated enough to pass through the adaptation process. Fast-paced matches require performing exact button pressing without any thinking, and that's not as simple as performing Shoryuken in training. Eventually, leverless controllers may bring good results, but they are not for everyone, and not every player objectively needs them. In general, switching to a specialized fighting controller should be a logical step in your development as a player. It's not a magic trick or a shortcut in practice. A person doesn't become Daigo after purchasing a hitbox, but as a tool, this thing may be something you really need to reach a high level. What do you play fighting games with? Do you think a fight stick is necessary to get better? Do you think leverless is the answer to all of our problems? Let us know in the comments. We learn from each other's shared experiences. Some game developers try to avoid any execution difficulties on the programming and moveset levels. We already have simplified inputs in Grand Blue Fantasy Versus and Street Fighter 6. A deeper dive into this topic happened in a dedicated video right here on the DashFight channel. Have you seen it yet? And that's it for today. I'm gonna go back to grinding with my not gonna tell you controller. We'll see you in the next video.